We're likely in one of the most bizarre seasons in F1, and we've seen Ferrari dominating the sport, but then Red Bull turned things in their own favour and are now in a commanding lead for both championships. The Austrian team has been nothing but phenomenal in the 2022 season, although the start hasn't been perfect for them and they have retired on the first 2 out of 3 races with reliability issues. Still, the team has managed to turn things around and is marching towards both of the championships. However, Red Bull didn't do it all on luck, as we've seen that the performance of the RB18 has been truly a marvelous thing to watch. So how did Red Bull do it? Stick around with us to find out more. There are some notable differences when you compare the RB18 with the other cars on the grid, especially with Ferrari and Mercedes. The side pods and the floor have been the most notable ones, but apart from these, Red Bull have managed to absolutely nail every single bit of their car and make it undefeatable on the grid. We've seen Verstappen winning races from P14, P10 and P7, and nothing would surprise us if he chooses to go P20 and win a race from the back of the grid. What's so special in that RB18 anyways? First, let's start with the suspension. 2022 saw the ban of an active suspension, and Red Bull created a new normal when it came to overall suspension layout that was in use until 2021. Since the RB5, which was the 2005 version of the car, the team has adopted a pull rod rear suspension at the rear and push rod at the front. Aerodynamically speaking, this was the best option for the team, but from 2022 we've seen a massive shake-up of the rules and Red Bull was forced to look elsewhere when it comes to this question. For example, the pull rod method was tried at the front end, and considering the impact of suspension on the new 2022 cars, the team opted for a push rod layout at the rear to clear space for the enlarged diffuser and pull rod at the front of the RB18. Apart from this, the RB18 uses a single element wishbone element at the front suspension, albeit this year it's applied to the top forwardmost arm as the setup is flipped over from before. The bib trays have also undergone changes, as there have been some changes when it comes to the bib region. In Red Bull's case, this comes in a form of a Belleville spring, whereas other options such as a damper, coil spring or leaf spring are being employed up and down the grid to varying degrees of effectiveness. The use of this kind of spring not only allows for the compact installation, but it can also result in less vibration, which could be the main reason why the car isn't porpoising as much as Ferrari or Mercedes. In that respect, we can see that the RB18 features a number of beams and internal stays to help support the floor relative to the chassis, helping to reduce how much the floor flexes as load is important upon it. Another major difference that Red Bull has compared to its rivals is the way the floor looks. The complexity of the floor is something truly marvelous, as only the genius mind of Adrian Newey can come up with something like this. When you see the floor, you're literally seeing elevations and depressions that all work together towards the floor perfect design, and it's something that is working in perfect symbiosis with the floor and diffuser. The sensitivity to changes in the ride height are also very much important for this season, as it adds importance to several aspects of the design. Apart from the floor, there is a huge complexity involved in the diffuser and its ancillary components. This has resulted in a weight gain relative to before, something the team are constantly looking to reduce in an effort to reduce lap time without compromising durability. Red Bull opted not to use the allowable edge wing like some of its rivals, as it took some inspiration from the regulations that were brought in 2021. Therefore, the team now has Z-shaped cutouts ahead of where teams were required to taper the rear corner of the floor. Just ahead of this, there is a horseshoe-like cutout which also creates a split level in the floor with the shorter section behind situated at a different height and with an appreciably different contour to that ahead of it. This has been made in an effort to optimize this portion of the floor on numerous occasions to improve performance both around the upper surface of the floor and the sideboard and the underfloor. All of this has resulted in a gurney-like flap being added to the corner of the floor's front section, whilst the size and the shape of the blister and channel formed on the edge of the sideboard have also been altered. Some of the teams weren't brave enough to take on the floor design of Red Bull, and it does indeed take some bravery to implement a floor like this in real life. It has several intriguing aspects, as teams would simply not accept that would be considered the conventional shapes and forms you'd expect the various elements to take. Red Bull have been really inventive when it comes to the brake cooling, as we've seen that the inner front brake duct was a big challenge to tackle in the 2022 season ever since the season opened. A major part of this goes to the enlargement of the tires that are now 18 inches compared to the 13 inches tires from 2021. The brake discs have grown in diameter too, as they are now measured 50mm more compared to 2021. But the drill holes that make their way from the center of the disc out to their edge are more limited, with a minimum diameter of 3mm allowed. Plus, cooling holes are no longer permitted to their pads. This is clearly having a huge impact on the design of numerous components, with the airflow and heat exchange of the assembly also altered by the larger brake duct drum that now resides within the wheel well. The sidepods are also something that Red Bull has been absolutely dominant at, as we've seen Aston Martin trying to copy them in Barcelona earlier this season, but failing miserably when trying to do so. The biggest of the changes that Red Bull has implemented on its bodywork was in Silverstone, a track that is considered as a high downforce one, and the team introduced a solution that was seen elsewhere on the grid. The shelf-like shoulder section extends rearwards from the halo and cockpit transition, creating upper ledge for which the airflow begs to follow and creating a divisional line for the competing flow structures below too. This development was followed up just a race later in Austria when it opened up the rear section of the engine cover, deposing the rearmost section of the shock fin when doing so. Red Bull has also implemented changes to the